The sun had barely risen over the vast plains of Kursk, casting long shadows over the rolling hills and endless fields of wheat. The morning air was thick with anticipation and the unmistakable smell of impending battle. As a soldier in the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich, I knew we were on the cusp of a significant and brutal confrontation. Operation Citadel, the German offensive aimed at encircling and destroying the Soviet forces at Kursk, was underway. Our objective was Prokhorovka, a small village that would soon be etched into the annals of history as the site of one of the largest tank battles ever fought. Our division had seen its share of fierce combat on the Eastern Front, but the scale of the Battle of Kursk was unprecedented. The Soviet defenses were formidable, with layers of trenches, minefields, and anti-obstacles. Our advance had been slow and costly, but the High Command was determined to break through. The tanks of our panzer regiments, including the powerful Tigers and Panthers, were poised for the decisive clash. The thunder of war. The sound of engines roared to life, a deafening symphony of power and fury. As we moved into position, the ground trembled beneath the weight of our tanks. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of exhaust. My comrades and I were tense but resolute. We had been through hell together, and today would be no different. The camaraderie among us was palpable. We were more than soldiers, we were brothers in arms. The Soviets had dug in deep around Prokhorovka, and as we advanced, the sky was filled with the thunderous roar of artillery. Explosions rocked the ground, sending plumes of dirt and debris into the air. The first wave of our tanks moved forward, and the battlefield erupted into chaos. The Soviets had brought their own armored forces to meet us, and soon, the plains were a swirling mass of steel and fire. I manned the turret of our Panzer IV, scanning the horizon for targets. The Soviet T-34s, though less formidable individually, outnumbered us significantly. The sheer number of enemy tanks was overwhelming. As we closed the distance, the distinctive crack of tank cannons and the staccato bursts of machine gun fire filled the air. Each hit we took rattled our nerves, but the armor held for now. The clashing of titans. The engagement at Prokhorovka was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The fields were a churning sea of tanks, infantry, and smoke. The noise was deafening, a cacophony of metal on metal, explosions, and the cries of the wounded. Our Tiger tanks, with their superior firepower and armor, were pivotal in the initial stages of the battle. But the Soviets fought with relentless ferocity, their determination evident in every maneuver. We pressed forward, firing at any Soviet tank that came into view. The T-34s were agile and fast, darting in and out of cover. Our Tiger tanks, though powerful, were slower and more cumbersome. The battle turned into a brutal close-quarters engagement, with tanks ramming each other and infantry clashing in desperate hand-to-hand combat. The ground was littered with the wreckage of destroyed vehicles and the bodies of fallen comrades. At one point, a Soviet anti-tank gun found its mark, and the tank next to ours erupted in flames. The heat was intense, and the sight of our comrades burning alive was a horror that will forever haunt my dreams. Despite the chaos, we kept fighting, driven by a mix of survival instinct and the bonds of brotherhood. We knew that retreat was not an option. Prokhorovka had to be taken, no matter the cost. A glimpse of humanity. Amidst the brutality of the battle, there were brief moments that reminded us of our shared humanity. During a temporary lull in the fighting, I caught sight of a young Soviet soldier, barely out of his teens, lying wounded in the field. He was clutching a photograph, his eyes filled with fear and pain. In that moment, he was no longer the enemy, but a human being, caught in the same nightmare as us. We exchanged a brief glance, a silent acknowledgement of the absurdity of war, but the moment was fleeting. The fighting resumed, and the relentless machine of war continued to grind us down. The memory of that young soldier stayed with me, a reminder that beneath the uniforms and weapons, we were all just men, forced into a conflict that was beyond our control. The aftermath. As the sun set on the battlefield, the ferocity of the battle began to wane. The once serene fields of Prokhorovka were now a landscape of destruction. The ground was scorched and torn, the air thick with smoke and the stench of burning fuel and flesh. The Soviet counterattack had been fierce, and while we had inflicted heavy losses on the enemy, our own casualties were staggering. We regrouped. Our numbers significantly diminished. The faces of my comrades were etched with exhaustion and the haunted look of those who had seen too much death. The battle for Prokhorovka was not the decisive victory we had hoped for. Instead, it became a brutal stalemate, a testament to the resilience and tenacity of the Soviet forces. As night fell, we tended to the wounded and mourned the dead. The fields were eerily quiet, the silence a stark contrast to the chaos of the day. The realization of our shared humanity, glimpsed in the eyes of that young Soviet soldier, lingered in my mind. We were all pawns in a larger game, our lives dictated by forces beyond our control. Reflections on war. In the days that followed, we were pulled back from the front lines to regroup and reorganize. The Battle of Prokhorovka had been a costly engagement for both sides, a grim reminder of the brutal nature of the Eastern Front. As I sat with my comrades, sharing what little food and warmth we could find, the camaraderie that had sustained us through the battle remained strong. The story of Prokhorovka is one of ferocity and futility, of bravery and brutality. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the bonds forged in the fires of war. As a soldier in the Das Reich Division, I had seen firsthand the horrors of battle and the strength of those who fought beside me. The memories of that day, the faces of my fallen comrades, and the fleeting glimpse of humanity in the eyes of the enemy will forever be etched in my mind. War is a crucible that tests the limits of our endurance and the depths of our humanity. The Battle of Prokhorovka was one of many such tests, a defining moment in a conflict that reshaped the world. As we moved forward, the lessons learned and the memories made would guide us, reminding us of the cost of war and the value of the bonds we shared.